Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bundesliga Show, brought to you by Over the Bar, with your hosts, myself, Rory Petre, and of course, Mark Broadhurst, stuck in Nuremberg, as we all are. Welcome to a bit of a bonus show that we're doing. Of course, there's been a full round of Bundesliga games in midweek, which is obviously a bit of a rarity, but in this condensed season, needs must, but that means we've got even more football to talk about, which is never a bad thing. So we're going to be doing a bit more of a condensed show, not the usual one that comes out on a Monday. So it's just really going to be pure football chat. Me and Mark are just kind of going to go through all the games one by one, still a featured four, and kind of talk about what's happened and maybe a few transfer bits as well. So no anagram or anything like that this week. So straight over to Mark, who'll run us through the results, and then we'll get into the featured four.
Yeah, so let's just quickly take a look at the games that took place over the obviously the week just gone by on the Tuesday and Wednesday nights. So let's just have a look. From the Tuesday night, we had in the early kickoff, Gladbach claimed a narrow 1-0 win over Herze Berlin. The big game of the midweek was a 2-1 win for Bayer Leverkusen over, well, I wouldn't say struggling, but underperforming Dortmund. Then we had maybe a shock 3-0 thrashing of Hertha Berlin by Hoffenheim, which was a bit of a shock. Then a comfortable 2-0 win for Wolfsburg away at Mainz. Then moving on to the Wednesday, the early kickoff in the big game. We billed this the big game, didn't we, with Greg? And it didn't work out well for Greg's team. They lost 2-1 at home to Cologne. Then we had a big win for Bielefeld, 3-0 over Stuttgart, so the battle of the two promoted sides. Then we had a narrow 1-0 win for Bayern away in Augsburg in the Bavarian derby. Then we had an entertaining 2-2 draw between Freiburg and Frankfurt, the two on-form teams really at the minute. Then we had a narrow 1-0 win for Leipzig at home over Union Berlin, only their third defeat of the season. So we are at the halfway point now in the Bundesliga season, the 17th week of fixtures. This was the midweek. So yeah, so as of the weekend, we will start again in the Bundesliga. It goes, they just repeat week 1 to 17 in a row. So we start again with the games from the first weekend all the way back in sunny September, wasn't it? Seems a long time ago now, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're back to the second half of the season now. So yeah, we're starting to get towards the business end. So yeah, so without further ado, let's press on to OTB's featured four. So we're not going to do a mystery anagram for this week because it's just a bonus show. So we're just going to get straight on to the featured four. And yeah, we're not going to do any of the extras this week. So yeah, so let's have a look at what we considered. There were quite a lot of good games actually this midweek. Often in the midweek games in the Bundesliga, the players are a little bit tired and fatigued. But this particular midweek, there were some really, really good games, I thought. Yeah, so let's start with the battle at the bottom, the Schalke versus Cologne game, which, as you can see, ended in a 2-1 win for Cologne. I mean, actually, I didn't expect this to be a good game at all. I think we previewed this with Greg last week, and we all said it's going to be like a 1-0 win, not many chances. But actually, in reality, there were tons of chances for both teams. And to be honest with you, I thought this was probably Cologne's best performance of the season in terms of creativity. I thought they had a really good game. They created a lot of chances, and I think they deserved the win in the last minute. It came in the 93rd minute, the goal. What did you think, Rory?
Yeah, I agree, actually. I think it was a good game by all accounts. Obviously, one of these ones that is it was a 6-pointer, of course, at the bottom of the table. Yeah, early chances for both teams. Obviously, at both ends of the pitch. Cologne did look like a threat, and obviously they kind of made the most of Schalke's vulnerability to the set piece again, as obviously the first goal has come from that. They even had a goal ruled out just before that as well. And obviously we chatted with Greg a little bit, and we were kind of talking about like the things that were kind of set in place. And one of the things that Greg mentioned was that they've made a good start with the keeper, Farman, who did make a bit of an error, unfortunately, for the first goal. He's come out and tried to punch clear, and he's not made enough contact, and the ball's come back in and is headed in as a result. But Schalke did well to hold on, and obviously got their break in the end after, guess who again, Mr. Matthew Hopp, managed to get his 5th goal now in the Bundesliga. Well done to him. He certainly looks like one for the future, or one for now, in Schalke's case, and obviously got the equaliser. And then it seemed that if any team were going to win it, it was going to be Schalke, and they were pushing forward and looking quite good. There were chances, but fortunately, that kind of lack of clinicality has come back to haunt them again, and then the sucker punch right at the end. And the young 18-year-old keeps his composure and does well, and slots home to make it 2-1, which, I mean, is that goal the killer blow for Schalke in the Bundesliga for this season? We'll talk a little bit about the other team that are on the same amount of points, which is Mainz, a little bit later on in the show. But right now the table is looking quite ugly for both of those two sides after that result, and of course the Arminia result. So yeah, couldn't have been a worse midweek for Schalke and their fans, of course, Greg. So sympathies from us, but yeah, it was a killer blow, that winner in the 93rd minute for Cologne.
Yeah, I think despite the fact that there perhaps are a few more positives for Schalke, obviously Matthew Hopp, we've mentioned 5 goals in 3 games. I mean, that's great going for a team that have struggled so much. I mean, I don't think he's far from a perfect player yet. Like, he missed a couple of chances in this game at 1-0 to Cologne. But I mean, and I would also say the Schalke goal was a real kind of mishap, really, defensively. They had, I think, 3 chances to get it clear. You often see that with the teams at the bottom in the Bundesliga. They make really, really horrendous errors defensively. And this was another one from Cologne, really. And they were looking quite comfortable at that time as well at 1-0, really. I think they hit the post. They had a couple of other chances. But, yeah, I mean, you already touched on the table. I mean, it just looks horrendous now, really, doesn't it, for Schalke, and obviously Mainz as well. I mean, they're 8 points adrift of the relegation playoff place now. And, I mean, it just doesn't get any worse than that. So effectively, they need to get 3 wins on the other teams just to make the relegation playoff. And obviously, teams like Cologne now and Bielefeld especially are really, really starting to improve. And it's just, for me, the writing's on the wall now. I think they had to win that game. And I think, obviously, we spoke to Greg about it, and he agreed as well that they had to win that game. And I was quietly confident that they would have enough. But I think they were a little bit unlucky about the fact that Cologne, for me, they've turned on probably the best attacking performance of the season. I don't know whether that's more to do with Schalke being poor defensively. Probably partly to do with that, yeah. But I still think Cologne, they look pretty good in attack. And I think they really had ambition. I think one thing that's been lacking from Cologne this season is a lack of ambition to win football matches at times. They've been overly happy to take 0-0 draws or 1-1 draws. But I think in this game, even at 1-0, they really wanted to win the game, and they weren't satisfied with the draw. And it was kind of like a counter-attack, really, that won the game for them before the clever finish from Thielemann. But yeah, I mean, it's a massive win. You could see from the celebrations, you'd have thought they'd won the Bundesliga the way they celebrated that winner. And I mean,
yeah,
at the end of the day, if you finish 3rd from bottom in the Bundesliga, you get that 2-legged playoff. And I think if you look at the history, I think there's only been 1 year in the last 8 years when the 2nd division sides actually won it. So, I mean, and that was Union Berlin, who were the team that actually won it. So I think if you look regarding that, it's really not looking pretty for the other two sides. But I think for Cologne and Bielefeld, they'll be quietly confident now that they can avoid that automatic place and win the playoff if it comes down to that, you know?
Yeah, I think looking at the way that Cologne approached it, certainly they were probably thinking, our 1-1, it's a better result for them than it is Schalke. And then the other side of it, they're probably thinking, well, if we go and win this, that, we effectively relegate Schalke and semi-save ourselves, because then it's almost a straight shot between Hertha, Arminia and themselves for the relegation playoff. And like you said, and obviously history is usually on the Bundesliga's side when it comes to the playoff game. So I think obviously that probably played a lot into perhaps their thinking, especially when you can try and hit Schalke on the break. Of course, circumstances just perhaps played into their hands a little bit. Obviously, Schalke were desperate to get the 3 points themselves. But yeah, it's very disappointing in terms of the league itself, because obviously we want to see a really tight and, close relegation battle all the way to into game week 34. We don't want to see this situation arise in game week 17. Having said that, obviously we are only halfway in. Of course, there's loads of football still to be played, so we do hope that both teams can pick up points and kind of make things a bit more interesting. But at the moment, it's looking grim, I must say.
Yeah, I would say it's far from over, to be honest. You can't. I think it's a lot of people. We like to make these big bold predictions, but at the end of the day, if Schalke can get a win in the next game, although it is against Bayern, so so it doesn't get any easier in the Bundesliga. But I mean, realistically, to get the third from bottom, you're probably looking at Schalke having to win 7 games or 8 games in the second half of the season, I would say, to get the third from bottom. And I mean, considering they've only won 1 game in over a year, it really doesn't bode well for them at all, does it? And I mean, I think the writing's well and truly on the wall, and barring a miracle, really, now they are going to get relegated for the first time in I think ever in the Bundesliga. I don't think they've ever been relegated since it's been professional. Don't quote me on that, but it's been a long time anyway since they've been in the second division. Okay, so let's swiftly move on to the next featured game, which was Herze Berlin versus Hoffenheim, which was a 3-0 thrashing for Hoffenheim. Obviously, the big talking point in this game is Piatek missing the penalty. It's just not going well for him, is it? I think 20 minutes on the clock, and Hertha have the perfect chance. Crazy tackle really from the Hoffenheim defender. You get the penalty, and to be fair, it's a great save from Baumann, the goalkeeper from Hoffenheim. It's a great save from a man who's not had a great season this year, really, has he? Let's be honest. And then I think after that, the way I saw it is that we saw more the kind of Hoffenheim that we used to seeing from years before. They played some great football. Almost immediately after that, they almost scored a goal, and they won very, very comfortably in the end, Rory.
Yeah, obviously, games are often hinged on big moments, and obviously there's no bigger moment than the Piatek spot kick, and obviously that it gives Hoffenheim that boost so that they're not 1-0 down fairly early on, and they can kind of try to relax into things, and then they did go on and play some good stuff. Obviously the first goal from Sebastian Rudy, good hit, but I think it does take a deflection off Guendouzi out of all people to make it 1-0. And then after that, Kramaric manages to get himself a couple of goals to get his season back underway, really. Obviously, the third goal is a really, really nice free kick from Kramaric. It's a good way to top off the game. But that attitude was kind of what we want to see, because what leads to the goal is that obviously Bebu comes out on the counter and hit Hertha, obviously as Hertha are pushing on to try and score themselves. But he then smashes the ball against the bar, and it comes out to Kramaric, and he is there already up there, obviously with that desire, showing that desire to want to kill the game and make it 3-0, wins the free kick himself, which he then scores himself. So I think to me that demonstrated a really good attitude from the front men to try and get as many goals as they could, because they knew that goals were there to be had, and obviously vital 3 points were there to be had as well for them. So yeah, very, very important win for Sebastian Hoeneß as well. That will alleviate some pressure on him. Now probably a lot more pressure onto the Hertha manager. Another home loss, which obviously for us doesn't come as a shock, because it seems to happen a lot for Hertha. Obviously, they did have chances, that's the thing. Cordoba, Cunha was involved as well. Maybe he should have taken the spot kick. Probably been their best player this season, to be honest. So maybe he should step up and take responsibility, perhaps. But yeah, obviously that win, is really big for Hoffenheim, because it takes them a good, I think, maybe 3 places up the league. And that obviously takes off a lot of pressure. And now they're sat in 11th place thinking, what's all the fuss about us in a relegation battle? So obviously the table is close from that kind of 10th to 15th spot. It is very close in that area. So yeah, big win for Hoffenheim and plenty of work to do for Hertha, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I think I totally like your point that the pressure has switched from Sebastian Hoeneß, which, to be fair to the board, Dietmar Hopp, they have backed him, and maybe now we will start to see an improvement. Sometimes it just takes that one result, doesn't it? And it changes, and we'll have to see. Obviously, they play Cologne at home, so it's another chance to get 3 points at the weekend. So, I mean, all of a sudden, if you win that, you're back into mid-table, really. You know, you're quite comfortable again. So, yeah, I mean, I think Bruno Labbadia, for me, he's never really done it since he was there. I mean, obviously, he replaced Jurgen Klinsmann, I think, roughly a year ago now. And for me, I look at that Hertha Berlin side, and for me, they should be like at least top half and ideally like top 6, 7. It's a really good side on paper. I mean, some of the players, as you've mentioned, Cunha, but also Guendouzi, like I think he was linked with like some of the even bigger clubs in Arsenal at one point when he first went there. And he has been good in general. But I mean, there's clearly something missing, and like we've mentioned a lot about the home form over the years, but they just seem to lack confidence. Like when they miss that penalty, they just fall apart really. And despite having chances, it's just not good enough, really, is it? I really do hope that Hoffenheim kick on now after this, though, because I really enjoyed this performance from them after the penalty. I thought it was much more like the Hoffenheim that we've seen in probably the last 3 or 4 years before this season. Some great football from Baumgartner was good. Bebu was good. Obviously, very, very important to them, Kramaric's return to form, because that's massive, really. I mean, I think he's only scored 1 goal or 2 goals since the second weekend. And obviously, he got 5 goals in the first 2 weekends. So, I mean, this is massive for him, really, because he is their talisman, and every football club needs that talisman, really, who they can rely on to score goals. So, yeah. But, yeah, all in all, well done, Hoffenheim. Well done, Sebastian Hoeneß. And as for Hertha, they're only 2 points off that bottom 3 place now. And nobody at the start of the season would have imagined that they'd be anywhere near the bottom 3. So, yeah, work to be done on that part of Berlin, that's for sure. Okay, so let's move on to what was billed as the big game, and it was quite a good game, to be honest. Not quite as many goals as we would have hoped, but I think there were a lot of chances there. Obviously, probably the big news was the fact that Florian Wirtz, like the new Havertz, really, isn't he? He's really proving to be a top player with a great finish to win the game. But for me, the man of the match really was Diaby. Like, his pace is just frightening, really. I don't think I've ever seen a faster player on a pitch in years. He's like lightning, literally. And obviously, he got the opening goal. And then, to be honest, the first half was just chance after chance for Leverkusen. He had so many chances. So a few good saves from Berkey. Berkey did come in for a little bit of criticism. Maybe he could have done a bit better with the goals. For me, he's not like the top class. I think he's a bit of a fan favourite, but he's not a top quality goalkeeper at times, I don't think. And he does make quite a few mistakes, mostly to do with his positioning more than his shot stopping ability. But yeah, I mean, Dortmund have found a way out a few times this season with Julian Brandt. Also, could the goalkeeper have done better with that goal as well? Perhaps, yes, to be honest. I think all 3 of the goals could have been saved potentially, really. But I think definitely Leverkusen deserved the win in the end, Rory.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a tale of 2 halves, because Leverkusen did come out strongest in the first half and did look like scoring more than 1 goal. Obviously, Florian Wirtz was central to all of that. They have missed him in recent weeks, so it's no shock to see that they were creating chances on his return. I think obviously him and Diaby were central to this game. Diaby's touch and finish for the first goal, well, his touch certainly was really, really good. Like we said, I think Berkey should save that. I would agree in saying that I don't think he's anywhere near world class as a keeper, Berkey. If Dortmund if they want to go on to that next level, they need a world class keeper, or even just an excellent in that sort of bracket keeper. And then in the second half, Dortmund did do better, as they were able to press a little bit higher up, a bit more energy, and that led to their equaliser, because they've gone up and squeezed the pitch a bit more, and they actually win the ball off of Wirtz. Ironically, he was one of the best players on the pitch. I think it's Akanji that's pressed him. The ball then falls to Brandt, who then obviously smashes in the equaliser. obviously against his former club where he kind of learnt his trade. I don't think there was much of a celebration on his behalf, so obviously showing a lot of respect there, which is good. We always like to see that. And then Leverkusen had to weather a bit of a storm because then Brandt almost scored again, taps over, clearing off the line. Did good bit of defending actually, because Brandt should score, and taps over does well to kind of close his legs and block the shot. And then it's a clinical counter attack basically that does the job. I think it's Diaby that then sets up Wirtz. And he keeps his cool and finishes well. So yeah, big win for Leverkusen. I think I predicted that they would beat Dortmund. I just expected them to kind of come good in this sort of a game. Obviously, the return of Wirtz has kind of helped them out with that creativity. They now, obviously, from this game, can they now recharge halfway through, sitting in third place? I think I've seen a few tweets from some of the accounts that I follow, certainly on Twitter, saying that realistically they've got to be fairly pleased with their start to the season, or, being halfway through. I'd certainly tend to agree, obviously minus this little blip since the Bayern loss. They have been really good and enjoyable to watch. So hopefully their win this midweek can launch another impressive spell of an unbeaten streak. From Dortmund's point of view, yeah, they just seem to be a team not in transition, because there's not been a lot of change in terms of the personnel, I wouldn't say, but the old things are coming back to haunt them again. Like the first goal is obviously just a long ball forward, speculative by Bailey to try and get it through. That's obviously triggered a lot of goals to be that have gone against Dortmund this season already. Haaland, his return has been very influential, but not even he can always, score the important goals in the big games as well. So yeah, they're just kind of one step forward, two back at the moment for Dortmund, and things need to just settle down a little bit. I expect them to comfortably get top four, but I can't see much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's 6 defeats now for them in the first half of the season. It's too many, to be honest. Because as you say, I mean, I know Haaland, I think he missed at least 5 or 6 of those games, but still, I mean, this is a very strong Dortmund side at the end of the day. I mean, you've still got guys like Jadon Sancho, who they fought like tooth and nail to keep in the summer, really, didn't they? And I mean, I don't want to blame him again, but it's not been a great season from him overall. I mean, we've seen a bit of an improvement the last 2 or 3 games, but still, I mean, and then Haaland obviously today wasn't at his best in this match. But I think overall, I mean, for me, the fact they keep playing Bellingham ahead of someone like Dahoud, like I've seen a few Dortmund fans saying like they don't understand where Dahoud is, because he was a good player. I think 2 or 3 years ago when he first came in, he looked like a quality player for them in that midfield. And I mean, obviously, as a British guy, I do look out for Bellingham and I want him to do well. I see him as a future England international. But I mean, for me, there's an element that they're putting too much pressure on the young lad, starting him so much at the moment. I mean, Dortmund's one of the big 10 clubs in Europe, or 10 or 12 clubs in Europe. And this is a young guy who's never even played Premier League football before this season. He's starting almost every game, I mean, we criticize the Premier League clubs a lot for not, for not playing these young English guys, and the German teams most definitely do. I mean, the German clubs are like trying to raid the big clubs in England for the young players, and it's great. It's great for the England national team, but for me, they're giving him too much exposure at the minute. I really do believe that. I think it's just he's 17, 18. It's too young to be playing every single game at this level, And I think if I were them, I'd be sticking someone like Dahoud in the team. Obviously, Witzel's injured now, so he's missing. But I think someone like Dahoud, they do have bodies in there that can replace some of these perhaps struggling players at the minute,
Yeah.
But I don't know, persisting with some of these guys. Obviously, Meunier as well has come in with a lot of stick from Dortmund fans, but they don't seem to want to replace him in the starting lineup. So I don't know.
I think certainly from Bellingham's point of view, I just don't, obviously, because from a Premier League and English perspective, not even anyone of a decent ilk would have even heard of him before he obviously then came onto the scene from Birmingham City. And so a lot of people probably don't even appreciate or know what sort of midfielder he is. I'm not even sure Dortmund do, because obviously he is a big lad. I think he's well over 6 foot. He's well built, obviously, for a young lad as well. So that kind of then dictates: are you, box-to-box midfielder? Are you strong enough to then play that holding role? Or do Dortmund want him to go forward and get goals? Obviously, apart from scoring on his debut, I think in the Pokal, he's not really got any goals. He might have one solitary Bundesliga goal apart from that. So, obviously, whatever Taylor's, system they want to play, does Bellingham fit into it at the moment as the midfielder he is? I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops as a player and how his position changes as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, he probably doesn't even know himself what kind of midfielder he'll be in the future. Like, for me, I thought he was going to be more of a holding kind of midfielder, to be honest, because I looked at his stats at Birmingham, and I think he only got like 2 or 3 goals in the Championship, and I think he was known as more of a kind of, he wasn't really a box-to-box midfielder, but more like the kind of, his passing and tackling was always good. But I think, I mean, Dortmund seem to want him to go forward a lot. You see him in forward positions a lot, and I think it's not really his game as far as I know. So I don't know, and I think it's he is struggling a little bit out there, to be honest. And I think maybe it'd be a good idea to take him out of the firing line for a few games and just give him a break, and then kick on again from next season, perhaps. But I guess in Germany, 30 million is a lot of money for a player. So I guess the pressure might be coming from the board to play him more often. I don't know, to be honest. Okay, so let's swiftly move on to the final featured game, which was, I mean, if you're talking about most impressive performances of team seasons, I mean, look no further than Bielefeld's 3-0 win over Stuttgart. So I think, I mean, obviously, if you watch this game, though, you'd realize that there's no way it was a 3-0 on paper. I mean, I would say that Stuttgart probably have more chances and more of the play, in all honesty, despite losing 3-0. But I think there's one man, and I know Rory's a fan of him because he included him in his Stefan Ortega. I mean, what a game he had, really, especially with the save with his kind of heel. How did you do that one, Rory?
And incredible, yeah. He has been a huge part of Bielefeld's season, and no more so than in this game again. Obviously the save you're referring to is just pure instinct and reactional from obviously the Kladzic flick on or can't remember if it's a volley or a header, but yeah, his save was so impressive, and the fact that he did that whole game and kept a clean sheet against free scoring team in Stuttgart. Obviously, the game between the two promoted teams this season was incredibly impressive, and he will continue to be a huge part of their season if they avoid the drop this season. I think obviously it's a bit of a weird one from Stuttgart. They were missing Gonzalez via suspension, and there was no Silas either. So Kladzic obviously did come in and try to replace Gonzalez's goals. But regardless of who or who wasn't there, you do have to credit Bielefeld, not just for their, not just the keeper Ortega, but their all-round play. A couple of players that we've mentioned previously for them came to the fore again this week. Obviously, I think Doan had a really good performance. Not only did he score the third goal, which obviously rounded off the game and killed the game, his cross just after half-time, whilst it was 1-0, then led to the Kempf own goal, which I think he probably could have done a bit better with. Kempf, he probably would have been disappointed with the way it kind of just hit his midriff and went in. So, yeah, he was obviously very impressive and a key part of the game. Close as well, getting himself another goal. Obviously, their talisman, just tapping in from a really good cross, actually. And I think the keeper, Kobel, probably, he just misses the cross, and which leads to close scoring into an open goal. So, yeah, I mean, there were chances for Stuttgart, but Bielefeld did what they always do. They always stay in games, and on this occasion, the lowest scorers in the Bundesliga are able to get some payback themselves and get 3 goals in the game, which they would have been absolutely buzzing with. So well done to Bielefeld, a really impressive performance that obviously massively helps them out. in terms of trying to get away from the relegation playoff place. And Stuttgart, yeah, just one of those days. I don't think they'll be too disappointed. I don't think they'll get dragged into any danger. Obviously, if they kind of mimic the second half of the season that they have the first, then they'll end up on, I think it's well over 40 points, which they're on 22 at the moment. So 44 points would be more than enough to keep them safe, and that'd be a really good return for a first season. Bielefeld, if they keep going like this, I think they'll beat the drop.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we mentioned before that Bielefeld, obviously they were starting to come out. They were losing too many games, 1-0, maybe 2-0, 2-1. But it seems to have turned around the last few weeks, doesn't it? And I mean, incredibly, an amazing stat is they've kept 4 out of 5 clean sheets now, Bielefeld. Looking back, going back to the game just before Christmas when they beat Schalke 1-0 away from home, they've had 4 clean sheets, and including 3 in a row now. Yeah, so I mean, it's an amazing run. I think we've got to give it. Obviously, Ortega's been the star man. I think there's no question about that. He's made save after save, but I think also the likes of Amos, Piper in central defence, and Nielsen also deserve a shout out too.
Yeah.
Because I thought Van der Horn would be like the first name on the team sheet for them, to be honest, but he's been kept out of the side in recent weeks. So yeah, well done to. I mean, they're not household names by any stretch of the imagination, but I mean, also Brunner and Lauerson, a fullback, deserve credit without doubt. Yeah. Okay, so well done to Bielefeld. A fantastic result for your fans, and good luck for the rest of the season. Okay, so that's the end of our featured 4 this week. Entertaining and maybe some surprising results in there. Okay, so let's go back to some of the other games as well. So let's start with the top 2. So Leipzig beat Union Berlin 1-0. Like my take on this is they definitely deserved to win the game. They were one of few sides that really managed to put Union out of the game, really. Union, apart from the late chance through Bolter, they didn't really have many chances at all, to be honest. And I think it was really a comfortable win. Not the best performance from pretty off-form Leipzig, but I mean, it's a big win, that one, Rory.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Crucial in terms of the title race as well, that super sub Forsberg comes on and gets the winner in the end. We have been critical of him in terms of not getting goals. So his strike was a nice clean one. To obviously then be the match winner is important for him and his confidence as well, I think. I'll be not free scoring at the moment. Obviously, we've talked about that plenty in terms of their striker situation, which at the moment they're not addressing in terms of the January transfer market. But yeah, huge win. They managed to stifle Union. It was a game that in both halves, the first and second, each half took a while to get going. There was a bit of a midfield battle, I think, but yeah, it was probably a deserved win for RB, and it does obviously keep the title race going a little bit more in that regard. So that's good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing we could say from this game, Danny Olmo seems to be like the talisman now, really. He's the key player for this Leipzig side, without doubt. Yeah, I think it's surprisingly he didn't really play that much last year, but I think this year he's really kind of become the number 1 guy for Leipzig nowadays, I would say. Okay, obviously another game, top of the table team was obviously Bayern winning 1-0 away in Augsburg. I mean, obviously it was a tale of 2 penalties, wasn't it, this one? And I think another thing that you can notice from this game is that Lewandowski's really not on form really at the minute, is he? I mean, he's still getting some goals, which is like, yeah, I mean, that's just what he does. But I mean, you could see in this game with the fact there were no fans, he was really getting angry and agitated. Like some of the shouts, like when he was missing the chances. He's not having it all his own way at the minute. But I mean, obviously, again, Bayern do what they do. They get the win. For me, especially in the first half, it was just chance after chance, and the goalkeeper for Augsburg kept them in it. And I mean, nobody could really claim that Augsburg deserved to get anything out of this game, really, because aside from the penalty, I don't think they did anything, really. Okay, yeah, a couple of chances after the penalty as well. A couple of chances after that. But before that, they did nothing, Rory, really.
Yeah, I think it was a complete and utter dominance in the first half from the champions. They should have gone up 2-3 up at least into half time and have the game won. Obviously, the penalty is a massive point. Obviously, hitting the post and missing it for Augsburg. They've let a chance to get a point or even more against champions slip there. And then obviously there were chances for them at the end. But obviously what was clear is that Bayern were tiring. I think obviously we did mention that there have been some good games this week and that sometimes midweek games lead to teams dying off a little bit. And I think that did happen with the champions. Obviously they have played a lot of football and that was the case. So Augsburg probably missed a trick, obviously not being clinical enough. Poor penalty, some poor strikes towards the end. Udukai and I think Niederlechner as well had good chances to make it 1-1 in the end. Lewandowski not quite happening for him. There's worse kind of places to be when you're playing poorly and have got 20 plus goals already. So fair play to him. I think obviously if Bayern hit their straps the second half of the season, they will cruise to the title. Obviously, they're clear at the moment, having not played very well, not very well, but having struggled in some games. So they are looking ominous as always. But we never know. 17 games to go. Let's see what happens in the title race.
Yeah, I think it has been a key few weeks, Rory, for the title race. Because, I mean, for me, Bayern really aren't playing well at the minute. This is probably I think this is the worst patch they've had in probably 2 years since the days of Robert Kovac, to be honest with you. And I think they've not played well for probably the last 5 or 6 games, but they've won most of them. Apart from the Gladbach game, they've won every game. And I think obviously even against Freiburg, the Freiburg performance was pretty good, but again, they could easily have not won that game with the last minute chance from Peterson. And it just seems as though it's ominous. The writing's on the wall a little bit at the minute. And I just hope that teams like Leverkusen and Leipzig can hang to the coattails, really, because otherwise it could end up being quite a comfortable title win, unfortunately, for Bayern. Sorry, Bayern fans, but yeah. Okay, so yeah, and probably one of the more entertaining games of the midweek as well was Freiburg to Frankfurt too. And I mean, I think this was a typical game between two sides who are really, really doing well, especially in attack at the minute. I mean, both sides are playing some really, really good football. The likes of Andre Silva is really playing well, probably his best form since he joined Frankfurt for big money. They're creating chances. I mean, who would you say would deserve to win that one more? Or do you think a draw was a fair result?
I think a draw is about as close as you can get to a fair result in that one. Both teams played their part in what was a really good game, actually. We could have quite easily thrown it into our featured four, I think, but there are other results that kind of stop that from happening. Frankfurt look really dangerous going forward with Silva kind of spearheading it. The fact that they're able to have talent like Kamada on the bench and then bring him on to change games is obviously a positive for them. And the fact that they've also got a certain Mr. Luka Jovic on the bench as well after his move and his kind of heroics against Schalke the other day wasn't even good enough for a place in the starting 11, kind of shows how strong they actually are. And Freiburg's good form also continues. Roland Salai, I liked his finish, really composed goal to get a deserved equaliser at the time. And then the ultimate super sub in Peterson, I think it was, who obviously got them to go 2-1 up, actually, perhaps against the run of play. It was a good game. I think you could have expected goals from this one, the way that both teams are playing. So enjoyable draw. And one that you always say Frankfurt are always a bit annoyed when they can't convert those games and they get another draw. But both sides looking good and have both got a fair shot for that top 6.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Frankfurt are out of a top 4 place at the minute, to be honest. I mean, maybe for Freiburg, yeah, I mean, top half is probably the aim still for Freiburg because, I mean, sometimes defensively they're not the best, but going forward they're outstanding, really, especially the last 10 games or so. But I think, yeah, for Frankfurt now, you're starting to see some real strength in depth in that side. I mean, it's just like Andre Silva and Luka Jovic as your front two. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, really, does it? I mean, obviously in some other, Younes as well is another one. He's kind of come from nowhere I think the last 5-6 games, and he's really becoming a good player. Like he gets goals and he creates chances and space. he looks a real quality player too. And it's just, I think the only thing with Frankfurt is that they're a little bit. I'm not a big fan of the back line, to be honest with you, with Frankfurt. I think like they've got a lot of these kind of 6'7" bean poles really in there. You know, the likes of Abraham, and I think they can be exploited. Let's just say that. And I think like really the second goal should have been prevented for Freiburg. To be honest, it was like head tennis, and then an even bigger header from Peterson, really, wasn't it? And it was just they should have been able to stop that one. I think if Frankfurt do want top four, and I do think they're capable of doing it, especially going forward at the minute and in midfield, I just think they need to clean up those soft goals that they concede at times, and then I think they can definitely get top four and at least top six, I would say. Okay, so let's move on to Wolfsburg, another form team at the minute. They just keep going from strength to strength with a very, very easy win against beleaguered Mainz. And I think to an extent, I would almost go as far to saying that Mainz have given up, really, Rory. I'll let you announce the transfer news, because I know that obviously it was you noticed that story. And I think, I mean, Mainz, have they got anything left, do you think?
Well, obviously it's tricky to say because they have come off a half decent result against Dortmund just the other day. But yeah, it always felt like this one was going to go the way of Wolfsburg. Obviously, the form side, you know, they were creating chances. Arnold had a half decent effort from a free kick early on, and then from then on in, Arnold then turns provider with a lovely through ball for Bielefeld to put in, and Weghorst then finishes the game after a really bad mistake from Hack, unfortunately, with a bad back pass. So obviously finished the game. Obviously Mainz are in all sorts of trouble as well as Schalke. One thing that we were going to do today is chat a little bit about some transfers. Maybe after this this last game, which is obviously in regards to who Mainz's goals have come from in the shape of Jean-Philippe Mateta. So we'll chat a little bit about him in due course. But yeah, Mainz as a side themselves, I mean, they don't look like they're going to score many at the moment, and their defence has already come in for plenty of flack from us, indeed, this season. So yeah, they're looking like they're as good as done as well for me.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Wout Weghorst as well. There's barely a game that he doesn't score, is there? I mean, you talk about talisman. Like, I mean, he is like mostly aerial goals as well. Like, he's kind of like a poor man's Lewandowski in some ways, isn't he? Like, he's that kind of guy that gets a lot of those. But that's a compliment, really. I mean, I think I mentioned him a lot early season that he wasn't scoring as many as in previous seasons, but the last 10, 12 games, like, he's just been scoring more or less every game. It's just it's great form from the Dutchman. It really is. There's no question about that. Okay, and the final game was maybe not the most entertaining game, but an important game for Gladbach, who won 1-0 over Werder Bremen. I think for Gladbach, it's just about winning those games with obviously the main man, Thuram, suspended, I think, for another one game now. I think they're coming close to the end of his suspension, and they are starting to look like a team again now, Gladbach. And I think you're starting to see the results of like a refreshed squad. They're not dealing with Europe anymore, and now it's 4 wins in 5 for them. And obviously 1 draw, which they probably should have won as well, that game against, they should have beaten Stuttgart at the weekend as well with that last-minute penalty. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely starting to look a lot better now, Rory, for Gladbach.
Yeah, after they got through the kind of first 20, 30 minutes or so where Werder looked dangerous, especially when Jan Sommer decides to kind of throw himself out of the area and try to undo all their good work, and it's a good clearance off the line in the end by Ginter, I think it is, to keep it 0-0. And then as the game went on, they looked a lot more settled, and then it's a really good header from Elvedi to be the winner in the end. Those goals, just, you know, whilst you're missing your talisman, have got to come from somewhere. Stindl came off the bench and kind of added a bit of an injection of quality as well. So yeah, important win. An important turn of fortunes as well for Gladbach to get themselves back in the mix. And they're looking a lot better. Werder, a 1-0 loss against Gladbach is far from disgraceful. So I think back to the drawing board for them, just go hard in the next game.
Yeah, and I think definitely that top four, that could be the really exciting race of this season, because I think there's at least 6 or 7 teams who are in the race for that, really. I mean, obviously you've got you've got Leipzig, Leverkusen, Dortmund. Then on top of that, you've got Frankfurt, Gladbach, and I would say you can't fully rule Freiburg out, and Wolfsburg, of course, as well. They're well in the race. So yeah, that could be a really exciting race as well this season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because obviously in Germany, maybe the Champions League qualification is even more important than in other leagues, because like the teams, they need that injection of cash because of the 50+1 rule means that the clubs don't have like big private investors like they do in other countries. So if they qualify for the Champions League, it means they can maybe buy 1 or 2 big name players in the summer. So it's very, very important, really.
Yeah, indeed. So that pretty much rounds up, obviously, our bonus midweek show. We're just going to quickly mention a couple of transfers that we've noticed anyway, that have basically been confirmed. A couple of ones that involve the 2 teams towards the bottom end of the table, well, rock bottom, in fact. So obviously the news coming in that Greg basically kind of broke to us on the show the other week that obviously Klaas Huntelaar has returned to Schalke from Ajax. So in terms of the team at the bottom of the table who are maybe missing goals, obviously we've seen Hop come to the fore, but I think that's a positive signing for them. I think he can only do, he can't do any worse than what's been happening. So a few goals from him, a bit of know-how, could well be the difference between them winning a few games and then perhaps getting back in the mix. So we'll have to see about that. And then on the other scale of it is Mainz, who are a team that obviously, of course, are struggling, and they have actually lost probably their main man who they've had going this season in the form of Jean-Philippe Mateta, who has joined Crystal Palace on loan. I think it's an 18-month loan, then with the option to buy. Obviously, these crazy deals that are done these days. So yeah, me and Mark spoke about this a little bit in the week, and we kind of thought, are they cashing in now on what is a deal where they might not get as much money if they're a 2 Bundesliga side? So that's an interesting one. He has scored some good goals for Mainz this season and started off really well. He looks like a good finisher as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on him in the Prem and see how he goes for Palace, who are a team in the Prem who have actually lacked goals themselves. So that is an interesting one. Young Frenchman. So we'll see how he goes in the Prem as well. So 2 interesting signings that could well be the difference for both Schalke and Mainz. But that basically brings us to a close in this bonus Bundesliga show. So thank you for tuning in to it, for your extra fix of Bundesliga action. And of course, we'll be back with the full Bundesliga show on Monday evening when it comes out, hopefully for more entertaining games over the weekend. So very quickly over to Mark to finish off the show.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the Twitter. So remember, guys, we post regular articles and also videos from the League One show, which went live last night, by the way. So I think the League One show, they want to continue with that in the future to start going live. So remember to check in, to comment, and it's just as important that you interact with them than with us as well. And check out at Over the Bar FB as well to find out all of our articles. We've got a lot of good articles being posted at the moment as well, like Paul's one on FC Royce, the Spanish 2nd or 3rd division team who were kicked out of the league basically, and then by Laporta, who is now trying to get presidency of Barcelona. So make sure you check that out, because it was a really, really big breaking news, kind of like breakthrough piece really for our site. So check that out. And also, of course, the otbfootball.net, which is the main website. So that's it for week 17. So we're halfway through the Bundesliga season, and let's hope that the second half of the season is as entertaining as the first. So auf Wiedersehen.
See you next time.